the broadband web, and essentially the implications of video. And let's think about this. Again, these are all pieces that you're seeing, but I just want to kind of reframe them in a different way for you guys and to think, I see what's really going on there, which is really interesting here. Now, to tell this story, I think you got to look at the Google guys. Now, Google, you can talk about them in a lot of different capacities, but I'm going to focus on the video piece of this, them buying YouTube. And really, because I really think that video piece is underappreciated. Now, the way I kind of tell this story, and you guys have lived through a lot of this, is just there's really two booms of the internet. The great 90s boom you talked about when I was at Wired was essentially the low bandwidth internet and essentially transformed all the media that could get sucked in those tighter pipes, as they say. And then the high bandwidth internet, which essentially sucked in total succession. You could just see it right on cue. The next biggest files were what? Audio files. Who got hit next? Music industry, Napster, all that was the early part of the decade. What's the next biggest files after that? Video files. Which is the next one that got hit? Basically, you watch television get hit mid-decade, and now you're essentially watching Hollywood, Netflix, all that's happening now with movie-level kind of things. It's all hitting. It's completely understood. It's a matter, it's just a function of bandwidth, basically, is one way to think about what happened here. You could see it in the beginning, and as you mentioned this Wired in the 93, 94, 95, 96, you could see this happening, but no one believed it. But basically now it's happened. So now we've essentially got this infrastructure where we can move that kind of level of information. This is the density information just kind of in size, the difference between the text, image, and video. Now, huge files, as you know. But the reason it's huge and why it's important is you can move a lot of information. Like I mentioned, the wink, the nod, the subtleties that you couldn't do in any of these other things. So here's a geeky one that you guys actually, you would probably appreciate. This is essentially watching what happened on the backbone of the internet from 1990 to 2010. So the last 20 years of traffic on the internet. Now what's interesting here is if you look at the bottom there, that web one, of course the web didn't exist at the beginning of the 90s, right? And then by 2000, when essentially the top of the dot-com boom, essentially more than half of the traffic on the backbone of the internet was the web, right? Well, what started happening with that blue thing there? You know, video always had a little sliver. There was real video and all that kind of stuff we were playing with, but we couldn't, it was not until YouTube, it was right about 2005, not just YouTube, but essentially the bandwidth opened up, boom, video explodes. Video is now more than half of all traffic on the internet right now is video. Now, coming from Cisco, who should know something about this, they're predicting basically over 90% of all traffic on the internet will be video within basically 2015 here, which is 4 years from now. Now, that doesn't mean this other stuff's going to go away because, of course, the pipes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But as a percentage of what goes over the traffic, it's basically video. So again, you guys' company, anybody's strategy has got to start adjusting in a very fundamental way to moving video. Video, 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 which is interesting. You guys, 3 cameras here. I'm telling you, I used to do these talks 2 years ago. No one would ever video these things. And now, in fact, everybody's videoing these things. And it's because of the cheapness of the tools, but also the utility of moving this stuff now, which is great. So this accounts for, you know, YouTube. Now, remind yourself where you just went back in time to the 90s. It was only 2005. In fact, it was December of 2005 when YouTube launched. I mean, that's not a long time ago, folks. And now we've got essentially 2 billion videos a day go off of YouTube. And in fact, that little movie thing you just showed here kind of took a little bit this away, because I'm going to show you this next thing is actually, they actually said a similar thing here. The other thing that's amazing about this is, again, they go from nothing in 2005 to they are now adding 24 hours of video are uploaded every minute. And ultimately, this is my number on this one. I don't know that I'll just, maybe this other movie had a little different there. But basically, more videos uploaded in 60 days in YouTube than all television networks produced in 60 years combined. And that's not just the US, that's all over the world. Crazy about a video that's going on, as you know. This is the one, though, that I think you should be keeping an eye on. Skype. There's now 500 million people now are opening channels across Skype. Video channels. Boom. All right, so the next thing, last little bit here in the tech space, so we start talking about the implications, is the social space, as you're talking about here. And of course, you go down another generation. We went from boomers to Generation X. Now we're at the millennials, which is the first big young mogul. Of course, Zuckerberg here with Facebook. But again, simple basics. What is that thing about social networks that's so powerful? It's the same network effect I just touched on before. Exponential doubling. And it's a simple thing, but let's review it. One guy asked two friends. Those two asked two friends. Everyone's just doing the same simple thing. It's just two people. All I'm asking is two people. Those four asked two friends. What's happening to the group, though, is you are doubling and doubling and doubling. And you do that one, it goes whoomp through the wall, boom across the street, boom. You get that same phenomena going on in this simple application of building social networks, and which is why they get so powerful and so crazy so fast. So you've now basically got, in the space of literally just a handful of years, you've got Facebook, take the biggest countries in the world, China and India being right there. Facebook is now basically the third biggest country in the world, right? And there isn't a peasant on it. I mean, it's essentially, they're all high school and college educated people. It's like the cream of the crop of the global population is now sitting in a nation, essentially, an organized way that you could actually do. It's a crazy thing. But that happened overnight. Power of networks, network effect, essentially. They were adding 700,000 people a day. Now, I don't know if that's actually consistent still right now, but this is about 9 months ago when I took this thing. 700,000 a day. That's like the size of the Los Angeles Times newspaper, which is essentially struggling to stay afloat, but in a day. And then the next day, there's another 700,000. It's crazy network effect. But it's really worth understanding those numbers. And of course, those numbers start to add up, where you start seeing these crazy numbers that we threw up in that thing. I mean, one thing that's worth pointing out here is when people say, well, gosh, you know, how many of those people really do stuff? Half of those people are on every single day, and the average time is an hour on there, which is a lot of time in a kind of a world that we're saying, oh, my God, everything's 30-second things. People are spending an hour in this space, and half of it, well, actually, you said every other day, so that's, you're the average. There you go. Every other day, you're there. Anyhow, crazy numbers. And just to bring it around to the good old Twitter, everyone wants to mention that, but just to show you those numbers, same hockey stick, same, you can go across any of these things, they're all the same. And we said, they're adding 300,000 new users a day. Twitter now, 300,000 a day, it's just nuts.